You look great. What are you doing? You changed, you know. So, and that's the encouragement. And then at the end, it's all about quality of life that counts.
Well, and as I'm sure you know, like when you're doing those things, you have that much more energy and stamina to do all the other stuff in life. So whether it's, running your business or playing with your, kids or whatever, if your body's healthy, then that means your mind's usually healthy and you've got more energy to do all of this stuff. So it all works together and it's like a no-brainer, and yet we have such a hard time getting out of our own way and actually doing those things.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say, yes, we know where Canada is, and British Columbia on the west coast, right, right. And then in British Columbia, we have this beautiful big city called Vancouver. Well, we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or for our friends in the Europe, 800 kilometers, which puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, big province, north, south, east, west. It is lots of timber here, lots of trees, lots of nature. We have black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, deer, mooses, foxes, you name it, we have it all here. 500 lakes all around us in the region. And so that's Prince George, British Columbia. Today we got a very, very interesting guest. Her name is Jen Esparza, and she is podcasting with us from Northern California. So Jen is a marketing agency owner, business consultant, an author dedicated to helping small businesses and non-profit craft and implementing effective marketing strategy. She's an author of the Marketing Basics for Small Business and Marketing Basics Nonprofit, both designed to provide clear, actionable guidance within industry jargon. Jen, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a bit about you. You're in Northern California, and so are you from there, or where did you start? And then obviously, what was a changing event for you, as it was for many of us around the world, was the couple of years when we had COVID. And so take us up to that point and then take us forward from there.
Okay. So yeah, I was born and raised in the town that I live in. So I've been here my entire life, third generation. Went to the same high school my parents did. My children went to the same high school. So it's pretty
Amazing.
neat to be part of the community. And
And the
go ahead.
name of the city is,
Roseville, California.
and just south of,
Sacramento, so the capital of California.
correct. Okay.
Uh, Yeah, and I've seen it grow immensely. So I remember when it was 20,000 people, and it's like 150,000 people. But I have an incredible community here that I've grown up in, and around my entire family who lives here. Um, Never did I see myself as a business owner, and even maybe doing what I do now. Like I've always had that helper instinct since I was a kid. So, the kid who offers to pass out papers, for the teacher, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that I ended up in a role where I am constantly helping others. But I really didn't see myself as a business owner. And yet, when the pandemic hit, I was working for a nonprofit and as a marketing director. But my main job was an editor for a magazine, and that magazine went out of business during the pandemic, right at the very beginning. So I was left with this wide open gap of like, what's next? And
Exactly.
I didn't even really see it until I had a friend who was going to do some electrical work for us and said, well, I actually need some marketing. Like, could we trade? And the light finally went on, like, I could actually do the marketing that I've been doing for this nonprofit. I could start my own agency. I could do this for others. So it really opened that door to be able to start my business. And the trajectory of the last, 4 or 5 years has been just that, building that.
What I found interesting is the city that you were born in, that you grew up in, and your family had lived in already for other generations, is what made it grow so rapidly in a short period of time, really. What was the industry that drove it, or was it,
Hmm.
what was it?
The railroad.
The
So we're a railroad town, and that's really what even put us on the map back in like 1906. And it's that is the main industry here. People come here just to work for the railroad because we're such a large hub for the Union Pacific. And so my dad actually worked for the railroad, so I was a railroad family, um, and that's part of it. But it's also they just had really great vision and city management as far as resources go. So the way that they've built the city, it's just they've done an incredible job of the way it's been organized, the way it's been laid out and planned out, to just become somewhere that people want to go. And when you're near a big city, like Sacramento is the hub of the capital, and but people don't want to necessarily live in the big city. Once they start, having kids, they want to be in the suburbs. And so this has really become a destination spot for those people who are maybe traveling to Sacramento, even to the Bay Area, like the San Francisco area, and it's become just a great hub for people to be able to still live in the suburbs but be close to the city.
How far is it by car to Sacramento from your city to not only Sacramento but also San Francisco? How far is it?
I'm about depending on traffic, it could be 30 minutes to Sacramento, all the way to an hour. San Francisco, again, depending on traffic, is about an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, depending on time of day. We actually, during the pandemic too, which has really increased like home values and things here. We have like no inventory. We can't keep up. But a lot of people from the Bay Area, which is the San Francisco area, during the pandemic moved here because they realized they could work from home. They didn't have to live near the city anymore. And our town or city just has amazing parks, amazing schools, and people like to live here. We're close to we've got farms, we've got orchards, we've got wineries nearby, and so it really is like this little place where we've got everything. And so a lot of them have moved this way as well.
Yeah, kind of a bedroom community to a larger city in a way,
Yeah.
right? Even San Francisco, an hour and a half. There are a lot of people that have to travel an hour and a half, so it's not uncommon to do. And then there are other quicker transportation system, maybe rail or small rail or buses that can take you down there fairly quickly.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah.
that being said, the city growing rapidly, and you then being already familiar with it, the makeup of the city based around railroading, in particular, I would assume that that attracts not necessarily large, huge companies, but more mid-sized to smaller kind of companies that are complementary to railroading businesses that uh, are, in some form connected to that. It creates that ideal setting for mid to smaller businesses, and it appears to me that's the area you focused on.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I mean, we do have, which is kind of crazy in my brain because I still think of this as a small town. We've got Bosch, who came over from Germany here and built a huge plant in our town. We've got Hewlett Packard, which is a computer, company that has a plant here in Roseville. So, a couple of, we do have some larger businesses who have, set up shop, but we really do have a great economy for the small business here, and that's definitely, nonprofits and small businesses are my focus in my line of work.
Yeah, and then having strategic policies of a community or a region are very, very important in terms of focusing on being pro-business is very important. I'm not trying to take this political, but through all the different politics of it, there must be a strategy that is pro-business and then complementary to that and supportive of that type of an approach.
Yeah, definitely. And we have an incredible chamber of commerce in Roseville. They're one of the largest ones in this area. And here we've got an accreditation system where if you're a five, you go through all these steps to get accredited, and they're considered a 5-star, which is as high as you can get. And they do a lot of advocacy work for us down at the Capitol. And I think it's a lot of things members don't even realize how hard they work to advocate for us to, be pro business. So when there's bills that come across that could hurt us as being a small business, they're right there in there fighting the fight for us to help, get those things, either the things that need to be passed, or to fight against the ones that aren't going to be good for small business. So that's definitely a reason that a lot of small businesses are here, because they are very pro business in this area.
And that's the key. And as I already said, I'm located here in British Columbia, Canada. And obviously, if I think about Canada and the United States, we are friends. We are very close, speak the same languages, do a lot of businesses cross border, and so do we, and so do I. I have a number of companies that work cross border a lot. We deal in lumber and a number of other things, warehousing, distribution, logistics, and real estate, and all of those kind of things. But it's always important to know I have been here in the Prince George region for 60 years. I came from Holland in 1965, was born there, came here when I was 24 years old, and and have been here ever since in northern British Columbia, but which is still a young country, really, in a young region. If I look at the United States, I think it was formed in 238 years ago, something around that, a long time, where Canada is younger than that, and especially regions like British Columbia, northern British Columbia here, which is amazing, beautiful, a beautiful area, as you already noted, looking over my shoulders. It's a beautiful sunny day here, although you likely see snow, and the temperature outside is minus 22 degrees.
Oh,
But that's
wow.
okay. Last week it was minus 30 to 35 degrees.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, but then soon it will be spring and summer, and it's beautiful here. But even
Wow.
then, it's the land of opportunity, but still young and still expanding as we speak. If you look at Canada, it's a beautiful, beautiful country, obviously, and then looking at Eastern Canada that has been established longer, where you have Ontario. Quebec is interesting because Quebec, a big province, but we have two official languages in Canada. The one is English, the other one is French, predominantly spoken in Quebec and some of the islands on the East Coast to a certain extent. And most of the languages, if you fly into Canada, then there will be two languages in which the cabin crew will address you, is either in English or in French. And
Nice.
so, which makes it unique. And then from there, and then we have the prairies, obviously, and then we have Alberta, a big province, lots of oil. In Alberta, northern Alberta has more oil than any other place in North America, if not in the world. That is, relatively new. Is oil sands that have been explored and are being exported from there in other places in Alberta. And then we have the beautiful province of British Columbia. And British Columbia, again, I fly a lot, and for business, but I'm also a pilot. And if I fly from British Columbia, the coast of British Columbia is amazing. It is beautiful. Obviously, everybody knows Vancouver. They know Victoria. They know Whistler, and all of those kind of places. And then from there on in, fly down the coast into Washington, Oregon, Northern California, and that whole coastline, other than the challenges, obviously, that our friends had in California in a number of months ago with the storms and all the fires. But, the still, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful area on the west coast of the U.S. and Canada. But
Yeah, they're going to
relative,
be needing the lumber.
pardon me?
Los Angeles is going to need that lumber here pretty soon.
Yeah. Now, we're going to have to, I don't want to make this political, but our friend, the new president of the United States, wants to put duties on, and that's not good, or tariffs. And, but hopefully that will not happen, because at the end of the day, that means that the inflation rate then simply will go up, and that's not good for anybody. But talking about your experience, so what happened is you had the background, and then COVID happened, as it did to all of us, and it changed a lot of things, and it changed your career with the magazine, and all of a sudden you had to say, where do I go from here? And likely that was the catalyst that made your entrepreneurial thing turn on and saying, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
in particular on the areas that you specialized in already, marketing.
Yeah, and it was really just the way like it fell into working with the small businesses. I was seeing firsthand between working at this nonprofit part time and then working with my friend who wanted me to help with marketing. I was seeing firsthand how much they were struggling. Like they have this amazing passion and drive for what they do, but nobody signs up when they're a small business owner to want to do their marketing and learn HR and legal and all those things that come along with owning a business. So it felt so rewarding to take that burden off of their plate and be able to take care of that for them, and they got to get closer, back doing what they wanted to do. So it just became a very harmonious mix of the people I wanted to work with. Like they were awesome business owners and they were great at their trade, they just needed help in this area. So that was really what attracted me to helping them.
And so that's what you started small, mainly for your local circle, and then you expanded. Another thing that you did that's got my attention, you started being an author, and you wrote a book that is called Marketing Basics for Your Small Business. And
Yeah,
and I was going to
right here.
say, if you got an example of it, and that is the book, you have
This
it
is the goal.
published.
Yes.
It's is
Yeah,
it available on?
like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy books. If they don't have it, they could order it. But Amazon's probably the easiest. Yeah, I realized as I started working that I couldn't help as many people as I wanted to just being by myself. And so, and I have a passion for writing. If you just locked me in a room and told me to write all day, I'd be a happy camper. So, I it just really made sense to write this book and be able to put all of this out plainly for people, because I see so many, when you don't know what you don't know, it's very easy to just do whatever someone tells you to do and you don't know that's the best thing for your business. And so I was hearing stories of, somebody wasting $10,000 because they were told that, they do these couple of things, they'll get all these leads and all this business, and nothing happened. And it broke my heart. So by laying out the basics for them, I was able to feel like, okay, I am giving them, with integrity, like some authentic information here, no jargon, no crazy tactics, just literally the basics. So they have a baseline to start when they
No
want to
hidden
start.
agenda.
Yeah. for sure. Like,
Yeah.
I,
So as we know, and I've been in business for since virtually since the time I got here, starting out with nothing virtually. The first business that I bought, I came here in 1965 with nothing really. Couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job, and then started, with very little money, and then fairly quickly became first a cleanup man, then a lumber pilot, then a supervisor, and then a superintendent, and then my first business I bought in 1967, and
it's incredible.
yeah, and then from there and then grew, and then and that was in 1967. I have to take you just back a little bit. When I I was born in 1940, so I'm 84 years young, and so as you already know, and our listeners know, that's the start of the Second World War, and we saw far too much that we should not have seen, and it was difficult. I was born in northeastern Holland, and and then we were liberated by the Canadian Army as part of the Allied forces that landed in Normandy in June of 1944, and the U.S., Canadians, and others, part of the Canadians went through France, through Belgium, through Holland, and I was born in northeastern Holland, so they pushed the German army out of there, and so we were liberated April the 12th, 1945. I was 5 years old. I was so impressed by it that I knew from that point on that if I grew up and when I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And so I was going to go when I was 17, and then they said, no, you're too young, and my parents, and then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years, and then when I was 23, I left for Canada. And I wanted to start with very little, so I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, very little money, and I had a dream. The second dream, the one was to go to Canada. Second dream was to build a lumber mill. Why a lumber mill? Because my dad had worked in lumber, my grandfather was a master carpenter, and I wanted to start my own company. But start with nothing. And so when I landed in Montreal in July of 1965, and took the train across Canada, 5 days, 5 nights, 4 days. Oh my God, that's a long way. And so when I landed in Vancouver, or arrived in Vancouver, I went to the immigration office in Vancouver, and I couldn't speak the language, so English, but I spoke some German, and unfortunately there was a German fella there. I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a lumber mill. He said, Prince George, that's where you have to go. Prince George was then a boom town, about 20,000 people maybe, and so if that, and so that's where I went, and it was 12, 13 hours away north, and I came off the bus with my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and then I counted my money at least 3 times, and I had exactly $25.47. But I had positive attitude. I avoid negative. No matter how tough things are, I always believe tomorrow will be a better day than the other one. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. And work ethic. I work harder than anybody. And I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And so, so then from there and then, as I said earlier, I very quickly, first I became a cleaner man, then lumber, blah, 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 take you through it. And then there was an opportunity to go to, of all places, the Yukon Territory for becoming a manager, part owner of a little sawmill. And for our people watching, saying, okay, where is the Yukon? Well, if you look at BC, Vancouver, Prince George is 500 miles north, and then the BC border north is 1,000 kilometers. North of that is the Yukon, and then west of that is Alaska. And the first city across the border of the Yukon is called Watson Lake. And so that's where I want. Now, can you imagine, Jen, for this fella coming from Holland? And if you ask me what's the climate in Holland, then I would say the difference between winter and summer in Holland is the rain is colder in the winter. So,
Hmm.
and so
Wow.
Watson Lake, I have seen temperatures minus 62 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
And so it was not easy, but I was there for 5 years, and in 1967, very quickly bought another company there, and then still was there for 5 years, and then started left there, and that's all part of a book that I wrote. I've wrote about 5 or 6 different books, and I left there, went back to Prince George, and then started in 1974 a company called the Brink Group of Companies, and we have about 10 different companies under that umbrella, including a lumber mill, by the way. And so that's kind of the history from my perspective, is that now this region here in northern British Columbia brings me somewhat to where you are. Now we have probably somewhere around 80 to 85,000 people living in Prince George. When I came in 1965, it was very common to ask the question when somebody spoke to you and then say, when did you arrive and when are you leaving? It was just a place to make money and then leave. Now, the Prince George region has lots of good infrastructure. It's a beautiful city with lots of things for families. It has a major college in the region and satellites. It has the University of Northern British Columbia. So it has become a very, very attractive region, and it's just only on the beginning. Northern British Columbia will expand and grow, and it is uniquely different from other areas, but doing business initially when you start is always a challenge, no matter what you do, and to understand the basics about, you may have an idea, you meaning in a general sense, and then once you have the idea, it becomes then a question, how do you go forward from there, and but is the business sensitive to economic up and down cycles, maybe, or or is there, as you already indicated, a positive approach politically to
Hmm.
attracting businesses and supporting them through all the ups and downs, which is usually not directly sensitive to politics, but there can be a strategic plan that is steady. All of those things are important to understand because, as we already know, and the same, I'm sure, is the same in the US as it is in Canada, is that most of the companies fail because of not necessarily that the commitment was not there and the ideas were not there, but because simply of things that the people that started at skill sets in one area and did not know how to attract the other ones that can be very, very difficult if you don't understand them.
Yeah, definitely. And that's actually the first part of both my books. There's like an assessment into like so that a company can get a baseline and see where those strengths and those weaknesses are, but helping them figure out what their value proposition is and what's their goals. Helping them figure out who their audience is and what having consistent branding. Like so many of those things, people just jump in with a great idea and they're not thinking about all those things. And if you don't have some solid building blocks, you might take off and it might sound like a great idea, but that foundation is what keeps you actually, thriving and growing. So that's so important to make sure if you can't do it yourself, if it's not your skill, you've got someone to help you.
So your first book was Marketing Basics for Small Businesses. What was your second book?
That one is Marketing Basics for Nonprofits. So
Okay.
very similar, similar in look, similar in actual book. It's just geared towards nonprofits. If a nonprofit is doing well, they are running themselves like a small business, but they also have other challenges that are different from a small business. And I wanted to make sure that I addressed that and had a tool for them to help them too.
Little bit tongue in cheek is sometimes I run businesses that became non-profit as well. I did, and I didn't need instructions for it. I did it all by myself.
Like yourself. Good job.
So just tongue in cheek a little bit. So so in that book is also available in all of the classic ones. Did you do an audio?
I did not. And the main reason I did not do the audio is because there's a lot of the book that actually requires to do exercises. So there's actually a whole workbook you can download for free from my website that's talked about throughout the book to help them go through these exercises. And I just feel like if you were in the car listening to this, or you were on the treadmill at the gym listening to the book, you're not going to go back and actually do the exercises. And those are the pieces of actually answering those questions and giving it thoughtful consideration. That's what's going to be the catalyst for change for you. And so I didn't trust my readers to do the work if they were just listening to it.
Stop the car.
Yeah, I've done that actually. If I'm listening to a book and I'm like, that's really good, I actually pulled over on the side of the road to write something down, and that's probably not safe. I mean, at least I pulled over, but
Yeah, at least you
no,
did. Yeah. So yeah, interesting. So what I did is the other part that I did is I have a number of books. The one that I wrote is this one, Against All Odds. But I was already, I'm a late bloomer, I think, so that I have to show you the second book to put some perspective on it. So that's the first one that I did, Against All Odds. It's not about how successful John is, just the opposite, going through all the ups and downs over all the years. Now, the other one that I wrote is a bit of a shocker for you, I'm sure, is ADHD Unlocked. Now, here comes the big secret. I am ADHD. And I call it a superpower. So, and so, and then I did another one is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. Is that find something you like to do, become good at it, and so many people don't. The reason that I wrote this one on one of the U.S. stations, I believe, forget now which one, CNN or ABC, who knows. I heard the program, they said that 75% of the people in the United States that are working don't like their jobs. The same is the case in Canada, in my opinion. And then 70% of the ones that don't like the job are looking for an other job. And so, and a lot of times I do presentations, you do too. You're a speaker of on demand, and so am I. And then when I do presentations, a lot of times I ask the people that I'm presenting, young people in particular that I'm presenting to, say, so have you decided which direction you want to go after you've finished with your degree? And a lot of them say, no, I don't know. And I say it's so important that you do, because at least get a direction. And so you want to be a truck driver, talk to truck drivers. Find out what they do, what is involved. Should I own one? Should I not own? On and on and on. Or you want to be a contractor. You want to be contracting on whatever it is. You want to be a home builder. Find out, talk to a builder. Or you want to be a doc. Talk to doctors that the medical or whatever they are, and find out what is involved, what should be the direction. Or you want to be a lawyer or an accountant or whatever. It would give you in a lot of or you want to be an entrepreneur. A lot of times what you will find, I say to them respectfully, is that a lot of these individuals are glad to share with them their experiences. And so, because what it then does, it gives you a focus of what direction, even in a general way, you want to go as you spend your time to laying the foundation of who you will be as you get older and rely on that foundation. That's why I wrote the book, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And
Right.
so, and then I did one other one that is health, fitness is so critically important. And everybody, including me, has to go to a period where they get a good wake-up call and saying, hey, John, time to change direction here for a healthy life. And and what I do now is I wrote this book, Living Young, Dying Old. It's a picture of
Great.
me, actually. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America,
Wow.
and at nearly 85. And so, and this is not about bodybuilding, it is about fitness, and so important. And so I had a case of diverticulitis that nearly killed me in 2008 when I was 68 years old, and I came that close. And then I knew at that point, although my wife is a vegetarian, I had to listen more to her. Although I did part of it, but not quite as good as I could. I did also the same as a lot of other people do. They, at the end of the year, they say, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing, and I'm going to buy a membership to the gym. Then 2 weeks later, they can find 100 reasons why they are too busy
Oh,
to go to the gym. And so I
yep.
knew I needed to get a trainer, stay with them. And that was 16 years ago in 2009 when I started. After I started going to the gym and training and did my diet things and started being more proactive, and somebody said to me when I was working out, he said, hey, have you ever thought about competing? Me? Really? And I said, well, why not? So that's what I did. So then, already in my 70s, I competed bodybuilding and physique. Northern British Columbia came in second bodybuilding, third in physique, qualified me for the provincials. Did about the same there, qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. Then COVID came, and now again I'm training to get to the Arnolds. And
Right.
but I'm not saying that everybody should be bodybuilding, but I do say though is that there is nothing more important. It's not age, it's not a number, it's quality of life that is so critically important. And if you stick with basic fundamentals that includes physical activity, don't have to become an Olympian or a bodybuilder, but simply combine healthy diet with sleep is very, very important, 8 to 9 hours. Get lots of vitamin D or sunshine. Get healthy exercise, may it be walking and some strength training in combination would be great, but start with walking initially and diet and all the other things. And before you know it, somebody is going to say, hey, John, or hey, Jen, you look great. What are you doing? You changed, So, and that's the encouragement. And then at the end, it's all about quality of life that counts.
Well, as I'm sure you know, like when you're doing those things, you have that much more energy and stamina to do all the other stuff in life. So whether it's, running your business or playing with your, kids or whatever, if your body's healthy, then that means your mind's usually healthy and you've got more energy to do all of this stuff. So it all works together and it's like a no-brainer, and yet we have such a hard time getting out of our own way and actually doing those things. Um but yeah, that's you're absolutely right. It's so important.
And we know already in a lot of cases, people accept that likely the last decade of your life, average age maybe, whatever it is, the last decade of your life, you will become ill in a number of ways. You need hands full of not healthy medicine to fix one problem, create probably two other ones. And so and all of that can be changed or affected by the earlier you start, the better. I suggest, and a lot of people say in their 40s, they say, no, I'm too old for that, or whatever. No, you're not. And so, like in my case, where I was already in my 60s when I started to work out, and then and then ended up like being here at 84, and looking forward to at least I want to become 120.
Awesome.
That's why I wrote the book. And
That's
and
awesome.
yeah. So, and as you already said, all of that is critical to becoming successful in business and all the elements around it.
Yeah, sure.
Now, the other part that you said, Jen, I'm not sure if you got that, is you're also active on the web. Have you got a website that people could
Yeah.
find you at?
Yeah, and I also have a lot of like free resources for nonprofits and business owners to help with all kinds of different marketing things. So my website's thejenadvantage.com. My business, that's my name is the Jen Advantage. And then on like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, I can be found at, like through just the Jen Advantage as well.
Okay. And then some of the other thing, so one of the questions that people will think about or ask you likely, how can small businesses, both for profit and nonprofit, identify their target audience? Because that virtually applies to any business, mid-size, not only small, but mid-size or others. And it's always amazing the difficulty that some people have is to identifying that target audience.
Yeah, because oftentimes folks will say, if you own a coffee shop or, you sell lumber, you're like, well, anyone's my customer. Like, I'll sell coffee or lumber to anyone. But you really have to get more specific and figure out like the demographics. Where are you located and what type of people need your product? And it doesn't mean that you're only going to sell to that one person. Like a lot of companies have multiple customer avatars, but it's so important to hone in on that and actually ask yourself questions like, well, how old are they? Well, where do they shop? Where do they work? Do they live in the suburbs or the city? What are their needs? To really make sure you're identifying what kind of person it is you're trying to go after. Because if your marketing is just very blasé and boring and very simple, if you're trying to market just to everybody and please everybody, it's really not going to land and resonate with anybody. So I know a company that sells like nutritional supplements, and their customer avatars are, there might be a bodybuilder who's really interested in making sure that, he's taking all the supplements to help him bulk up and help him compete. Whereas another one might be, a 25-year-old, first time mom who's just trying to get back into shape. And the other might be, a 60-year-old woman who just wants to feel healthy and, fit and live her golden years, feeling healthy. But they're all very different people. But like it's really honing in on, well, what's that person's need and what are their goals, and then which of our products actually serve them. You
So
have to spend time.
one of the things you used is an avatar. What is an avatar? Although I know, but maybe some people don't, because share that with us.
Yeah, so a customer avatar, like when I do this for a client, I go so far as to find a picture of somebody on the internet that would match this, person, this customer we're describing. We name them, so it might be Susan Jones is your customer, and she's 64, and she's got grandkids, and she's married, and she lives in the suburbs, and she was a professional. Like really getting into the details so you understand what kind of a message is going to resonate with them. And so the customer avatar is like literally your pretend ideal customer that's going to buy this product, and knowing everything about them so that you can better sell your product and reach them.
So that is very, very important. And then brand identity is important in terms of the name of what will somebody attract to I have something first. I have to get their attention, and sometimes what it does is the brand, or if it is a book, the title becomes very, very important, because what you want to do is somebody. Step one is, how can I make somebody pick up that book? And
Yeah.
then once they pick up the book, it is likely they will look at the back of the book and see the back, meaning the outside of it on the back. I'm just fantasizing here, but I'm assuming that's what I
Yeah.
do. You know, so so those things are very, very important. And
Yeah. And it,
especially when you start a business, once you start, you cannot. I'm not saying you cannot, but that if you start off with having that part understood, the importance of it, because you can not really say that 2 months later after I started the business, I don't like the name, so I'm going to change it.
right. Well, and you can eventually you can rebrand, and you could you could, but and I feel like some people do get hung up on that type of thing, and really like at the end of the day, the name's not probably as important as it is the message that you're delivering and the quality of service you're delivering and what people are saying about you. But I feel like sometimes when people start a business, they're in a huge hurry, which could be a good thing because like I like to take my time with everything and I like everything figured out before I start, which can hold you back as well. But people start in a hurry and they get excited and they might start having, like they're really busy all of a sudden and they don't know how to handle all this business. And so they think those things don't matter. Yeah. They think those things don't matter because they're like, oh, well, I'm busy and I have people calling me. Well, then 6 months down the road, they're not busy and they haven't created any source of branding for themselves. And they're like, oh, well, why isn't the phone ringing? Well, why doesn't anyone know about me? So you have to be putting those things into place strategically along the way so that at month 6, you're not going, oh no, where's everyone?
Yeah, exactly. So I interviewed somebody that worked with Amazon at one point, and I believe somebody had the story saying when Jeff Bezos, no, what is his name again?
Bezos?
Yeah,
Bezos?
Bezos, when he started the model, mainly on books initially, that he had a company name of Cadavra or something like that, and then somebody suggested to him that maybe this was not the right name because it related to dead bodies more so than books and going forward. So then
Terrible.
maybe what he did then, I'm just imagining this, but the story is a true one apparently. And then I said, well, how did he get to the other one? Well, it falls in the category of when we all used to have at one point phone books that we go through, and the ones on top of the list start with an A. So then, but he decided to go to Amazon. I'm just being funny here about that
Yeah.
part, but not in terms of the name. He had initially the wrong name, and somebody then suggested to him, his lawyer or something, said that that may not be the right one to use, but name of companies or of the vehicle are becoming very, very important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, if you do choose your name, there's even things like making sure that other people don't have the same name as you. And I've had a friend who had to completely rebrand his company because he got a cease and desist order after he'd already been in business for like 5 years. And that just really messed them up. So there are things you need to consider that can't just be a knee jerk reaction. Like you do need to do some research when you're choosing things like that.
Yeah, and a lot of that research is now available. You don't necessarily need to get lawyers for it, but already can do some of the research yourself already online. And but the yeah, it's true that and it's a global industry is more and more global all the time as well. And so. So, what are some of the other things like in managing at a time that you start a company or start an adventure as an entrepreneurial individual, how can you be most effective in terms of cost that is so critical at the initial start when you're still kind of feeling your way and so what what would be, I would suggest that find a consulting person or organization that can help you. Chamber of Commerce can sometimes be helpful to direct you to a source like you, for instance, working with small profit and non-profit type businesses where you have already a whole lot of experience in a whole lot of different areas that can guide them then further. That's a good start.
Yeah, and that's actually like my favorite thing with working with companies is when they really need that foundation help them to build it because they don't have a lot of money yet. But even things like just making sure that their social media channels are dialed in, like they've got their right, they've got their logo, they've got clear and concise pictures of what they do, helping them figure out their messaging and, like we said, like the audience. Making sure that all those things are dialed in, that's free. Social media is, a free resource, and helping them, if it's appropriate, like build an email list and creating that type of marketing for them, because while it's not necessarily free, it's very low cost, very low barrier to entry, and a great way to keep in touch with the customers. So I feel like that's kind of, once people have done business with their friends and family or the contacts they already had and they feel like they're stuck, they haven't already put those things in place. And like we talked about branding, and even more so than your name, like just creating, especially for like a home service company. I tell a story in my book how I was seeing, like I saw a handyman sign in my neighborhood, and then I saw his truck, and then heard a advertisement on the radio, and I was like, wow, this handyman's legitimate. Like, I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm starting to hear about it now. I saw it, at a little local fair, summer fair. I'm like, okay, this is who this is. So helping just create those different touches of like points of contact to be like, okay, this is a good company. Like, I can see they're in my area. They're being used. They take themselves seriously. I know what their cute little, branded guy looks like. I see their colors, and it creates that, brand recognition. So those types of things, I mean, there's a little money involved, but it's pretty low cost, especially when you're starting out. That those are the types of things I like to see a company get into place. And I have companies that hire me just to help them with that strategy work in the beginning, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know how. Like, God, as somebody who's rebranding herself right now, she worked in the corporate world for all these years, and now she's going off as a consultant. Well, she never had to worry about things like social media or building an audience or things like that, because she had her corporation to do it for her. And she's just learning all of these things. So that's what we're working through together. And it's so awesome to help know that like the solid foundation is going to help what builds her success.
So the interesting part now, Jen, is that a lot of things have changed, and part of that is that we become more and more a global industry. Podcasting has become what I call the new media, in with the potential of being global, and it's only on its infancy, in my opinion. In ourselves, about 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I started blogging, gradually worked in the local region, doing a form of podcasting, probably, but regionally. And then from there on in, COVID came. That changed my world, your world, and many, many other people's. And then we couldn't do that anymore. So then we said, I had this apartment that we are sitting in now, and started to interview people here on this couch here. I'm sitting here interacting with persons. We still do that to a certain extent, but probably 95 are of our interaction is virtual. And so I started watching TV, and more I see different interviews happening on US TV, Canadian TV, whatever. And I see one, two, three, four different people from all over the world all interacting, and it became more smooth, where before it would have problems here, there, and all over, but now more and more smooth, and saying, you know what, we should go virtual. And so we did that. We then signed up with Podmatch that had a model that brings individuals together that are complementary from all around the world. So, although most of our podcasting is North American, but still we podcast people from all over the world in addition to that. And so, so you are my podcast number where I'm hosting 377, and then where I'm hosting, and then probably I do probably another at least 200 more, 200 to 250 over the years where I'm a guest on other people's podcasts. So the coverage is amazing, not bragging, but just making the point of the power of podcasting is that on YouTube, we have nearly 750,000 subscribers alone on that vehicle, meaning that the other ones that not being YouTube, but where we have subscribers, is probably over 2 million people watching. Immensely powerful.
So and you don't need it. You have a beautiful studio, you've got a beautiful setup, but the really cool thing about podcasting is like you can start small, and you don't have to have an amazing studio and all this to get started. Like you can start small and work your way up to it and get to the reach where you're at. So
exactly. And then where it is going from here, it's just still at its infancy. So I want to make sure before you go again, so you are also, because of your website, the information that you provide in your business model does not only apply to Northern California, not only to the United States, not only to North America, it goes beyond that because the issues are the same in other places, so they can still reach you or follow you on your website. Give it to us once more.
thejenadvantage.com. And you're right, that's the cool thing. Like when you sell books on Amazon, you can see where people are buying your books from. And it's so cool to see when people in like the European countries or whatever are buying the book, and you're like, oh my gosh, like to know you can have that sort of reach. It's like you said with the podcast, it's really awesome to be able to reach beyond your own little circle. And so many things with marketing, and you have a business, they're all just human problems. Like we don't have enough time, we don't have the skills, and we just need help. And that is not applicable to just here, that's everywhere. So yeah, it applies all over the world.
And it's a changing world. The borders are no longer there for the purposes of what we are doing, and less so all the time. And then add to that, and that would probably take another hour for us, another time. But I'm going to add the other element which will change the world is AI as it moves forward. The genie is out of the bottle. It will never go back. It will change all the things that we are doing, and I believe that's a good thing. And I'm very excited about as that takes us forward. But that will then include that we will become globally even more interactive, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people have asked, like, if I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job now that AI exists, and I say no, because I still think that it needs a brain behind what it's being fed, and to be able to decide, and discern whether or not the information is correct. And there's definitely, power users on AI who could do a better job than just someone who sits down and says, write me a social media post about plumbing. So there's definitely work that still has to go into the AI in order to get a good product out. So confident I still have a job.
Excellent, Jen. And for all those people watching us, if you like our discussion and our interaction between Jen Esparza and myself, then subscribe to our podcast, Jen's as well as mine. Like it, share it with others, and comment on that if you like it. That will then stimulate us to do more of these type of podcasts and others around the globe. Jen, thank you for being on my podcast. It was a privilege, and let's make sure we stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was great.
Thanks, Jen. Take care.